Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. Over the weekend, the Phils split with the Pirates. Where do we begin with evaluating that series? Well, I thought that a split was a real possibility, and I'll tell you why, and why I think there's also some negatives to take out of that four-game set. You start a series with the Rockies tonight. We'll take a look forward at what that series has in store. And also, it's a favorable week for the Phillies schedule-wise. What should we expect when it comes to the series with the Rockies and a series with the White Sox coming up? So we'll take a look at all of that in today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is indeed Locked On Phillies. Of course, I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for checking us out. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff. It really helps us out. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. So keep your vehicle alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. The Phils wrapped up their series with the Pirates yesterday afternoon. It was not ideal. Zach Wheeler had 10 strikeouts in the game, but the final batter he faced was a grand slam given up. And that's not the way you want to end your day. The Phillies only scored 2 runs in that series ender, the Pirates 9. And just like that, you split 2 games apiece with the Pirates. So how do we evaluate this series? Well, I talked with Ethan Smith of Locked On Pirates on Friday's episode, our most recent episode. You can go ahead and check that out. We had a lot of great stuff to say about what could happen this series, what has to go right for these teams to win this series, what has to go wrong for them to lose this series. And I think we kind of had an idea layout-wise of what could potentially go wrong for the Philadelphia Phillies. And I'm not saying things went wrong. Like I'll lay this out to start. I thought a split was a distinct possibility coming into this 4-game series, right? Here's a way I want to look at it. And people might say, oh, you're crazy for seeing things this way. But if this had been your normal 3-game series, the Phillies won game 1 of the series, they won game 3 of the series. You know what that would have been? That would have been another 2-1 series win, their 3rd in a row. Instead, they played 4 games because they didn't have the off day Thursday. So you had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that led to the 4-game, 2-game split apiece, which means it looks worse visually. It feels worse as a fan. When you look at the Pirates roster compared to the Phillies roster, they're frankly not overly comparable at this point because the Phillies roster is loaded with all-stars and the Pirates roster has got a lot of young talent that high ceilings for some of those guys, but they don't look like a team that should be like on the level of the Phillies when everything's all said and done. But let me talk to you a little bit about what went wrong in this series from my perspective. The offense is still sputtering. We thought we saw something on Thursday when the Phils scored 5 runs and won 5-1. And then the rest of the series, they went 2 runs, 4 runs, 2 runs. And you're not exactly facing the who's who of great pitchers around baseball. I mean, Bailey Falter got the win in game 2 of this series, the Friday game. That's not something that you're really expecting to happen. In the Saturday game, you're looking at a situation where Marco Gonzalez, talented enough pitcher, but he went 6 innings of 2-run ball against you. I mean, you probably should have done a little bit better against Marco Gonzalez. And then you got Mitch Keller yesterday. Mitch Keller's a very good pitcher, one of the more underrated pitchers in baseball. You had the better pitcher on the mound. You had Zach Wheeler out there. And I don't know, looking at yesterday's game specifically, if I'm going to get mad at Rob Thompson for leaving Wheeler in. You had the bases loaded with no outs there when he gives up the grand slam that really kind of put that game not out of reach, but it made you feel like, oh, yeah, this might not go the Phil's way. You kind of have to ride with your number one starter if he's dicing. Like I said, he had 10 strikeouts in his start, and it was only 5 innings worth of work that he'd gone through so far. He did end up throwing 100 pitches, but when you have Wheeler fanning as many batters, you only allowed 5 hits, which through 5 innings is not great for Zach Wheeler. 3 walks, not great for Zach Wheeler, but I kind of felt okay with him leaving Wheeler out there, and you're going to get burned sometimes. I don't really fault much pitching as a reason why the Philadelphia Phillies didn't find a way to win this series. Really, the problems with the Phillies right now comes down to the offense. Bryce Harper's gone cold, and that's not a good thing. He was 0 for 4 yesterday. He was not great in this series. I think this is just my professional opinion. So the neon batting gloves that he wears, honestly, I think they're bad luck, or they're sapping his superpower strengths or whatever. I feel like every time he wears those bright, like green fluorescent neon batting gloves, the dude just goes over. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen him get a hit with those on. I'm exaggerating that a little bit, but let's remember this. Bryce Harper started off the season very cold, and then he had a game where his first hit of the year was a home run, and he followed that up with 2 more home runs, including a grand slam. If you ever worry about Bryce Harper, take a step back and remind yourself that you should never worry about this guy. He's that talented. But it's more than just Bryce Harper as an individual. Now, Trey Turner had a nice game yesterday. 3-hit game, 2 RBIs. He had his first home run of the year. You're looking at a guy that, okay, he's starting to figure that out a little bit more. But the problem is Kyle Schwarber, strong start to the year early on. He went 0 for 4 yesterday. Bryce Harper had that 3-home-run game, but he's been relatively quiet to start the year. He went 0 for 4. He's batting 190 on the season. I mean, it's not ideal. Like, Alec Boehm went 0 for 4. He's had clutch RBIs, but when I look at this team, the biggest problem with the Philadelphia Phillies is they haven't yet all got clicking at the same time. It's like, it's almost like they get together in the clubhouse before the game, and they're like, okay, Alec Boehm's going to go off today, so nobody else needs to hit. Or Brandon Marshall's going to go off today, nobody else needs to hit. Or Bryce Harper's going to get 3 home runs today, nobody else needs to hit. And they obviously don't do that, right? They don't try and pick and choose when guys are going to get hot or anything like that. There are some teams out there in baseball, and I think this is one of those times where you need perspective on what's going on around the majors. There are some teams where they have guys not capable of reaching the level that they need to be at. They'll have 3 or 4 good hitters on a team, and if those guys are cold, you're in trouble, and that's where you live and die. The upside for the Philadelphia Phillies, and you know I'm an upside guy. If you've listened to this podcast at all, I am hugely positive on the Philadelphia Phillies, and not just because, like, you're looking at a situation where I mean, I do believe in the team. I honestly do. And I don't think it's just like, oh, I'm trying to see the world through Phillies colored glasses. I'm looking at a situation where I do believe that they're much better than what they're playing like right now. And I'm going to believe that until proven otherwise. And I'm not going to get that through 16 games of baseball. They're 8-8 right now. So I understand if this sounds overly positive, but the way I look at the Phillies is they have a bunch of all-world talent. They're just not hitting at the same time right now. But Trey Turner had a game yesterday. Kyle Schwarber has had moments. Bryce Harper's had moments. Boehm, Realmuto, Stott, like all of these guys. Brandon Marsh, Yohan Rojas had a 3-8 game. Nick Castellanos has had games. They're showing flashes right now, but it's not like there's not a track record with these guys. It's not like you haven't seen this before. We also need to remember that baseball is one of those sports where if you've seen it before, you're probably going to see it again just because how long the season is. If you've seen it before a couple of times, if you've seen it a handful of times. And for a lot of these players, you've seen handfuls of great seasons. Realmuto, Harper, Castellanos, Schwarber, like those, Turner, those are all guys that you look at and say, oh, they've got multiple all-star seasons under their belt. Some of them all MLB seasons, one of them MVP seasons. Like they've got enough of a track record that I wouldn't be worried about their overall ability as baseball players, it's almost just kind of a luck thing. It feels like their good days are not linking up with other players' good days, and that makes it hard to consistently produce runs. That's why you have issues with runners in scoring position because some guys are hot and the guys behind them are not hitting that day. But it's much better than, oh, we have 4 or 5 guys that are just like automatic outs all the time. You just have a rotating cast of guys contributing, and eventually you're going to get to a point where they start clicking at the same time. And the one thing that I'll always contend, well, not always, but I'll contend at this point in the season for a while until I start worrying, the ceiling of this team hasn't changed. I'm not looking at this team saying they're not a top 5 team in baseball. It's not. They don't have any fatal flaws right now. They're not hitting currently. They're going to hit. It's a beautiful day in Philly. It's going to be 79 degrees today. So that means that the ball's going to fly a little bit different, a little bit of a better day for offense. And coming up, we're going to talk about the series they have with the Colorado Rockies beginning tonight. It's a very gettable team. So I'd expect the offense to be significantly better in this upcoming series. So it wasn't ideal against the Pirates. I thought a split was possible because I was worried about the offense being able to keep up and not scoring enough runs. And that's kind of what happened in a couple games. So let's see if they can remedy that in the matchup with the Pittsburgh Pirates, or with the Colorado Rockies, rather. And we can kind of just, this is one of those series that we won't remember in a month. It's not a huge impact series. It's not one where a lot of crazy stuff happened. It's just wasn't your best effort. You got a chance to make up for it, though. That's the beauty of baseball. They play again tonight. We'll talk about that series with the Rockies coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. All right, let's talk about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships. And it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. I mean, they got supercharged roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. You got all the parts you need at prices you want. It's super easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Oh, and we've got a new sponsor to talk about. Now, I'm just going to tell you this. I haven't even opened the ad read yet. No, I don't even have the script in front of me. When I go out to bars sometimes to watch the Phillies game. There's one right down the street. And my goodness, the people who work there, the bartenders, they are so hard sometimes to get a hold of, like to get focused. And let me tell you why. It's because they're playing this game. They're playing Monopoly Go. They're obsessed with it. It's all they talk about. So I know that this is a fun app because it is literally distracting them. Now, I love those bartenders. I love that place. But my point is, this is a fun game. You can get lost in it, and that's what you want, right? So let me tell you about Monopoly Go, okay? I am a super competitive person, and I think anyone who knows me personally would know that. And with a competitive side, like I think if you're a sports fan, we all have, you should definitely check out Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards. You got a bunch of crazy locations. You build up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part is you get to like mess with your friends. All of them, the reason they all like it at that bar I go to is because they can all play together. You can go ahead and be friends with your friends on the game. You can rob their vaults of riches for yourself, create a little drama in the friend group, and the leaderboards show you who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. It's not just the competitive side that's going to be satisfied by Monopoly Go, but you can team up with friends of people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or on Google Play. Well, like I said, we're leaving that Pirates series behind us. And we're going to discuss a little bit later on in the week a series with the White Sox upcoming, and we're going to talk about that later. But the Colorado Rockies series that starts tonight is the first in a stretch this week of two series that seem to be very gettable for the Philadelphia Phillies. The Rockies are 4-12. We know that they're not one of the juggernaut franchises in baseball. I'm going to be respectful to them because they're a Major League Baseball franchise, the same way I was when the Phillies faced the Washington Nationals. But here's how I look at this series. Am I going into a series with the Colorado Rockies saying, well, this has got to be a sweep? No, because I very rarely go into series where I'm like, if you don't sweep this team, I'm going to be upset. It's hard to sweep teams in baseball. It just is, man. It's really difficult to win 3 games straight against any team with different pitchers on the mound. Most teams in baseball have a guy on the mound that could steal you a game. The problem is they don't do it consistently enough, but it's tough to do that. So I'm not going to say, oh, you have to sweep the Rockies. But this is going to be good for people who have been upset with the Phillies this year and think I'm taking it too easy on them. If the Phillies do not win this series with the Rockies, a 2-1 series victory or a sweep, this will be the first time you see me upset with the Philadelphia Phillies because this is a very winnable series. This is a very gettable team in the Colorado Rockies. I mean, look no further than the pitching matchup in Game 1 tonight, 6:40 p.m. first pitch at Citizens Bank Park. Aaron Nola is facing off against Cal Quantrill. Cal Quantrill so far this year is 0-2 with a 7.2 ERA, and 1.73 WHIP in 15 innings pitched. I mean, Aaron Nola has not had a great start to the year, and he's already 2-1 with a 4.5 ERA. Cal Quantrill has not been throwing well for the Rockies. It's a major advantage for the Philadelphia Phillies in that matchup. Then you have Ranger Suarez against Austin Gomber. And the Phillies have had success against Gomber in the past. A lefty who's like he's got a 4.91 ERA, a 1.64 WHIP. It's a lot of the same. A lot of guys in the high 4s, low 5s ERA zone, sometimes even higher, like we were just talking about with Cal Quantrill. The Rockies don't really have too much for you to be overly worried about. If there's a game in the series that I'm worried about, it's a series ender where you're going to face Ryan Feltner and you have Christopher Sanchez on the mound because Sanchez, his last time out, he was against the Pirates. He looked kind of shaky, and he doesn't normally look shaky. It was just one of those starts where he didn't have his best stuff. And it kind of the game got away from him a little bit. Even in that one, the Phillies are significantly favored when it comes to the ESPN analytics. So they're favored in every game. The weather looks fine. You shouldn't have to worry about crazy winds like you did this weekend. It seems to be warmer. Everything is giving the Phillies an opportunity to win this series, and that's a good sign. Let's also, though, look at not just the pitching matchups, because as I brought up ahead of their series with the Pirates, the Philadelphia Phillies are going to have the advantage in pitching matchups basically all year long. They have that good of a rotation. But let's look at some of the guys who are in this lineup for the Colorado Rockies and how they're doing. The middle of the order kind of looks interesting. As you're looking at Tovar, McMahon, Diaz, those guys all hitting over 311 or higher. But outside of that, I mean, and the names that you're seeing for these Rockies lineups and these Rockies players, it's just not anything that should strike fear into the heart of opposing pitchers. Like Nolan Jones, not exactly Nolan Arenado. When you're looking at Ezequiel Tovar, he's got 3 homers. He's batting .317, 8 RBIs. Is Ezequiel Tovar a guy that you think about when it comes to the best shortstops in baseball? Like, no, he's just not. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to these players. Some of them are having nice starts to the year, but like, if you told me you know a lot about Brenton Doyle, you're lying to yourself. Like, as a Phillies fan, I'm sure Rockies fans obviously know about him. I'm trying to be careful because when I talked about the Pirates series, I had a lot of Pirates fans in my DMs trying to tell me I don't know ball. Even though Ranger Suarez pitched better than Jared Jones, but I don't need to relitigate that. My point is, this is a vastly overmatched baseball team when you have the Rockies coming into Citizens Bank Park to play the Phillies. The 4 wins that the Rockies have had so far this year, too, it's not like they're beating up on some of the better teams. They beat the Blue Jays 12-4. They had a strong offensive output there. At the beginning of March, they handled the Diamondbacks a little bit, but it's just, well, actually, I only took 1 from the Diamondbacks. This team is not one you should be worried about. I don't even think they've won a series yet this year. No, they have not yet won a series on the season. So that should tell you that if the Phillies don't win the series against the Rockies, you're going to have an issue with me, with the fan base, with a lot of people. So we'll discuss that when we get into that situation as the series begins tonight. Coming up as we wrap up, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what to focus on with a favorable week ahead, not just the Rockies, but the schedule in general. So we're going to talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. All right, let's talk about Yahoo Finance, another new sponsor. Happy for them to be on board with us here at Locked On. And let me tell you this, right? Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? Just have everything everywhere you need it. Well, with Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. Like, for example, if you have an investment account with Schwab and a 401k with Fidelity, you don't want to have to go to multiple places for that. You could just loop them all together with Yahoo Finance, consolidate them in one place. It makes it incredibly easy to manage them and keep track of your finances. You want to grow your portfolio and deal with the rising cost of inflation. I mean, the dollar doesn't go far anymore. So you got to get into a spot where you're making the most of your money. So paying off your debt, your mortgage become harder. Anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom, well, Yahoo Finance can help you. You can get access to news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. There's so much stuff that you want to check out with this. They're the number one finance destination. They produce a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Anybody who's anybody working with finances like this, they're going to want to use what you've got here with Yahoo Finance. You're going to want to check this out. So go ahead and check out Yahoo Finance. You've got all of that with yahoofinance.com. They're the number one financial destination. Again, yahoofinance.com. One more time for you. That's yahoofinance.com. So this week for the Phillies has them with 3 games against the Colorado Rockies. And then something much needed. They haven't had an off day in a little bit. They're going to have an off day on Thursday. And then they have 3 against the White Sox in Philadelphia to round out the longest homestand of the year. The White Sox are 2-13. The Rockies are 4-12. Now, should the Phillies win like 5 of 6 games this week? Some people might say yes. And I would not be surprised if they did that. I don't expect them to go 6-0. I know sweeps are hard, but these are 2 series where a sweep in either one of them would not surprise me. I think the proper expectation is a 4-2 week. That would put you 2 games above 500, which is where, mind you, the Phillies finished the month of April last year. They ended up winning 90 games. You also have, to round out the month, you got 4 against the Reds, 3 against the Padres, and 2 against the Angels before it flips over to May. You're going to be able to, none of those teams are like incredibly tough competition. Solid teams, better than what you're seeing this week. But if you go 2 games above 500 this week and you just continue to win series, you're going to be at a better mark at the end of April than what you were last season. So my goal, like my base level for this week, is 4 wins. 5 wouldn't surprise me. 6 would be awesome. I'd be ecstatic. But that's just a general idea of what we're looking at as far as the expectations for this week. And in that series against the White Sox, you're going to get Wheeler. You're going to go ahead and see a situation where you're going to see Spencer Turnbull again, but he's been all right. Like, you're going to have the pitching advantage, the lineup advantage, basically every advantage against these next 2 teams. This is where, if the Phillies still struggle, I'll start to have questions. But until this point, I'm still believing in the ceiling of this team. I'm not raising alarm bells yet. I'm worried about the offense a little bit, but I do think that individually they've shown potential. As a team, it just hasn't come all the way together. So something to focus on as we dive deeper into this week of very winnable games. And that's good news. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to react to tonight's game and talk a little bit about what hopefully went right. And I also want to kind of dive into the other top teams in the National League. Are the Dodgers and the Braves, who are really the 2 teams that you look at as talent-wise above the Phillies, are they in a situation where they're blowing you out of the water? Or is this like this concern that we have in certain aspects of how the Philadelphia Phillies are playing something that's echoed with other top teams around the National League? And we can even do around baseball too. So we'll get into that on next episode, but that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for checking us out. Again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing, all that great stuff that I always tell you about. And I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.